Alright, so now covering the polycentric structure of US AI governance. So unlike China's state-centric model or the European Union's centralized legislative approach, the United States has a polycentric system. So what does that mean? We have basically federal agencies. Each governs AI within its domain. FTC for consumer protection, DoD for military AI, FDA for medical AI, EEOC for employment bias. State governments create local AI laws, for example, Illinois biometric law, California privacy law. Then we have private companies set de facto global standards through their products. And then we have civil society and academia, which shape norms, ethics, and public discourse related to AI. And courts, which interpret algorithmic harms through case law. This ecosystem is rich, but it is fragmented. It allows innovation to flourish, but produces inconsistencies, regulatory gaps, and uneven protections. For example, companies may adopt voluntary standards but face no penalties for ignoring them. States may pass privacy laws that conflict with each other. Defense agencies may accelerate AI development with little public oversight. Thus, US AI governance reflects not a unified model, but a competitive marketplace of government ideas. The normative foundations of US AI governance. So the American model basically rests on four key normative commitments. First is market liberalism, a belief that innovation flourishes best when the government intervention is limited. This explains why the US has no national AI regulator. Companies self govern through internal ethic boards, and regulators intervene only after harm has occurred. In this logic, market competition rather than state oversight ensures progress. And this term is usually market liberalism is known as laissez-faire,
Laissez-faire is a French term.
right? It's basically a French term which means allowed to do, which refers to a policy of minimal government intervention in the economy, right? So let me show you this picture. Laissez-faire. Basically, it means that laissez-faire economics restricts the government intervention in the economy, right? So basically, it's a theory that says that the government should not intervene in the economy except to protect individuals' inalienable rights. Policies need three components to work: capitalism, the free market economy, and rational market theory. And basically, it's a theory that restricts government intervention in economy. All right. So now moving on. Secondly, we have the second key normative commitment is civil rights and anti-discrimination law. So U.S. governance places a strong emphasis on preventing discrimination in hiring, lending, policing, housing, education, and some more other domains. So this legal foundation drives frameworks like the AI Bill of Rights, which emphasizes fairness and equal protection. Now, national security and technological dominance. So AI is seen as decisive for future geopolitical power. Thus, the US government invests heavily in military AI, AI for intelligence and cyber operations, semiconductor manufacturing, and export controls. For example, restricting chips to China. This produces a duality, that is, AI must be safe, but it also must remain fast because slowing innovation risks losing leadership to adversaries. And fourth, we have freedom of speech and expression. The First Amendment heavily constrains how the US regulates content moderation, synthetic media, and recommender systems. This prevents European style content controls and shapes a deeply decentralized approach to digital risks. Now, key governance instruments in the Biden era. So, the Biden administration produced the three most important AI governance tools in US history. First was the AI Bill of Rights, passed in 2022, a sweeping normative framework containing five pillars: safe and effective systems, algorithmic discrimination protections, data privacy, notice and explanation, human alternatives consideration, and fallback. So, it has no legal force but serves as a moral blueprint, a public expectation setting tool, a standard for civil society advocacy, and an anchor for future legislation. Its philosophical grounding is the US civil rights tradition. Second, we have the NIST AI Risk Management Framework, AI RMF. So it's a technical standard used by the industry, which includes mapping risks, measuring impacts, managing risks, and documenting the process. It promotes transparency, explainability, security, fairness, and accountability. Though voluntary, it shapes corporate compliance culture. And third, we have the 2023 Executive Order on Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy AI. So, this Executive Order EO is the most powerful instrument in American AI governance. It mandates reporting requirements for frontier model developers, standards for AI generated content detection, safety test results to be submitted to the government, expanded NIST responsibilities, workforce and labor rights protections, federal procurement standards, guidance for law enforcement use of AI. So, this EO indirectly creates a de facto regulatory regime despite the absence of congressional legislation. Next, we have state level AI governance. So, because the federal government lacks comprehensive law, states act as mini laboratories of AI governance. For example, California has the strongest privacy law, the CCPA, and Illinois has a strict biometric privacy law, BIPA. New York City audit requirements for hiring algorithms. So, this produces an uneven regulatory landscape that companies must navigate state by state. Now, corporate governance as de facto regulation. In the absence of comprehensive federal law, major tech companies function as private regulators. So the companies set rules for content moderation, synthetic media, data governance, safety evaluations, red teaming, transparency policies, and usage restrictions, which leads to what scholars call platform governance, where corporations govern societal processes once controlled by the state. Now, the US governance model in global context, compared to China and the European Union, US model basically prioritizes innovation, markets, and civil rights. The European Union model prioritizes rights, safety, and ex ante regulation. China model prioritizes stability, state power, and ideological control. America competes not only economically but normatively, seeking to demonstrate that democratic systems can responsibly govern advanced AI. The central tension in US AI policy, all American AI governance struggles revolve around one key contradiction. How can the US impose safety rules without stifling innovation in a geopolitical race with China? This dual imperative shapes Biden's executive order, Congress's reluctance to impose a strict regulation, heavy national security framing, private sector's massive influence, and the polycentric nature of governance institutions. Now, the US AI governance model is best understood as a distributed system which has no unified regulator, many overlapping institutions, many powerful private actors, rights driven norms, innovation first political culture, national security urgency. So, rather than a coherent policy architecture, the US offers a dynamic, competitive, and improvisational governance ecosystem capable of rapid innovation but prone to fragmentation and inconsistency. Right now, moving on to some comparisons. Right, so AI governance today is an axis of global political competition and normative divergence. The European Union advances a to rights and risk regulatory model built on legal certainty, human-centric values, and ex ante obligations, the EU AI Act and related instruments. So the United States operates a polycentric market innovation model that blends civil right values, state by state experimentation, strong private sector rule making, and an urgent national security framing that accelerates research and development. So China implements a state driven development security model that pursues technological mastery under party leadership, emphasizes social stability and collective values, and wields regulatory instruments to align industry with the national strategic objectives. Each system reflects its political economy, legal traditions, and strategic priorities. Each has distinct strengths and pathologies that affect global competition, supply chains, and transnational norms. So basically, we go over that. So now we're covering normative foundations, what each model values and why. So the European Union is all for rights, dignity, and the rule of law. So the European Union's approach is grounded in a well-developed human rights tradition and emphasis on regulatory precaution and legalism. The ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, that is HLEG, then GDPR and the AI Act collectively show the EU's core normative commitments are lawfulness, ethicality, and robustness, plus the primacy of individual rights, that is privacy, non-discrimination, and human dignity. So the European Union treats AI governance as a public order problem where ex ante rules and accountability mechanisms are necessary to prevent harm and to preserve the social trust. Moving on, we have United States, which focuses on innovation, civil rights, and national security. So the US combines market liberalism with civil rights concerns and an overriding national security imperative. Historically, Obama era, the emphasis was on responsible innovation and fairness. The Trump era emphasized deregulation and speed, and the Biden era attempts a hybrid: protect rights, that is a Bill of Rights, set technical standards, NIST, AI, RMF, while preserving the competitiveness and applying strict export control defense measures. The United States thus values innovation, economic competitiveness, individual civil rights, and strategic advantage, sometimes in uncomfortable tension as well. Then we have China, which has the model that basically shows its political order, governance by a single ruling party oriented to uh, state led economic development and maintenance of social stability. The Next Generation AI Development Plan, AIDP, released in 2017, and subsequent regulations frame AI as a tool for national power, industrial upgrading, and social governance. China emphasizes collective welfare, social order, and controllability, and the alignment of private actors to party priorities rather than individual autonomy. Right. Moving on, institutional architecture: who governs and what and how decisions are made. So European Union has a central legal machine plus distributed implementation. So it creates binding rules at the supranational level that member states implement through national authorities and notified bodies. The European Commission drafts legislation, the European Parliament negotiates it, and the national authorities oversee enforcement. The EU uses conformity assessments, registration, and strong administrative sanctions, or top down legal process that still allows states and firms to internalize standards. Implication: a high level clarity and strong extraterritorial effect. That is the Brussels effect. Then we have US polycentric patchwork with strong private governance. So the US lacks a single AI regulator. Instead, federal agencies regulate domain specific uses. States enact varying rules, like the California privacy law, Illinois biometric restrictions, and private firms set de facto global practices. Executive orders and standard setting bodies fill these gaps. This network competitive regulatory ecosystem produces rapid innovation but inconsistent consumer protections. So we basically have flexibility and fast adaptation, but regulatory fragmentation and enforcement variance. Finally, we have China, party state coordination with local experimentation. So its institutional arrangement centers on party leadership and state councils setting strategic direction, ministries issuing technical rules, and provincial or municipal governments executing pilots and incentives. Corporations are co opted into governance through party committees and regulatory mandates. The state gets sets grand strategy, localities implement aggressively, often competing to deliver results. Now, instruments and technical legal tools we'll be covering in the next video.